The council chamber smelled like failure. Diana Reeves stood in the center of the room while 12 pairs of eyes judged her from their elevated seats. Her hands were steady at her sides, but her heart hammered against her ribs like something trying to escape. 3 attempts, Council Leader Raymond said. His voice carried across the silent room. 3 failures. The law is clear. Diana kept her gaze level. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Outside the reinforced windows, New Tertius stretched in every direction, its purple forest hiding creatures that most people feared. She had grown up learning to hunt those creatures, learning that killing them made you valuable, learning that hesitation made you worthless. The third proving hunt was your final chance. Raymond leaned forward. You returned empty-handed. Worse, you lost your weapon and triggered a stampede that damaged 2 harvest fields. Do you have anything to say? Diana thought about the razor tusk she had cornered 3 days ago. Its red eyes had been wild with fear, not rage. Behind it, 2 cubs barely old enough to walk had huddled against the rocks. The creature could have killed her easily. Instead, it had positioned itself between Diana and its young, making a choice she understood too well. She had lowered her rifle. The razor tusk had charged past her, its cubs scrambling after it. The stampede had been her fault, technically, but those cubs were alive. No, Diana said. I have nothing to say. One of the Krell observers made a sound like rocks grinding together. The reptilian warrior sat in the guest section, his scaled face impossible to read. The Krell had been living alongside humans on New Tertius for 15 years now. They respected strength. They respected the kill. They had no patience for weakness. Then, by the authority of this council, you are declared unfit for the hunt. Raymond's words fell like hammers. Your hunting privileges are revoked. You will surrender your weapon permit, your tracker badge, and your residential claim in the Hunter District. You have 7 days to relocate to the waste management sector. Someone in the observation gallery gasped. Diana knew who it was without looking. Her father sat up there somewhere, watching his daughter become the family's greatest shame. This hearing is concluded. Raymond struck his desk with finality. Diana turned and walked out. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She moved through the double doors with her head high, even as the whispers started behind her. The hallway outside was empty except for Owen, her former hunting partner. He stood against the far wall, arms crossed, face carefully blank. Owen, Diana said, don't. He pushed off the wall. I warned you. I told you to take the shot. But you had to be soft about it. They were cubs. They were targets. Owen's jaw tightened. I can't be associated with you anymore. My family's reputation depends on successful hunts. You understand. He walked away before she could respond. Diana watched him go, feeling something hollow expand in her chest. They had trained together since childhood. They had survived 3 dangerous hunts before she failed her proving. And now he couldn't even look at her. The walk back to her apartment took 20 minutes. People she had known her entire life suddenly found reasons to cross the street. Parents pulled their children a little closer when she passed. By the time Diana reached her building, she felt like she was invisible. Her apartment was small but well-placed, with a view of the northern forest. In 7 days, she would lose this too. The waste district was on the opposite side of the colony, near the recycling plants where the air always smelled like chemicals and regret. Diana sat on her narrow bed and stared at her hands. They were calloused from years of training. Strong hands. Capable hands. Apparently, worthless hands. Her comm unit buzzed. A message from her father, short and devastating. Don't come to dinner this week. Your mother needs time. Diana deleted it without responding. Night fell over New Tertius in shades of violet and deep blue. The colony's lights came on in sections, creating patterns across the settlement. Diana stood by her window and looked out at the forest beyond the perimeter wall. Something moved between trees. Large shapes, darker than shadows. Diana grabbed her binoculars. Even though she wasn't supposed to have them anymore, 3 ridge spines walked along the forest edge. Each one was the size of a small transport vehicle, their armored backs reflecting the colony lights. They were apex predators, normally solitary. Seeing 3 together was unusual. They stopped at the same spot, all facing the colony. Facing her window, it seemed Diana's comm unit crackled. The colony-wide channel activated. All residents, alert status yellow. Multiple large creatures detected near the eastern perimeter. Hunting teams to stations. This is not a drill. Through her binoculars, Diana watched the ridge spines. They didn't look aggressive. They stood perfectly still, as if waiting for something. One of them, the largest, had fresh scars across its back. The watchguards appeared on the wall, weapons ready. Lights swept across the forest. The ridge spines didn't move. After several minutes, the guards began to look nervous. Protocol said to fire warning shots. No one did. Diana lowered her binoculars. Something felt wrong about this. Ridge spines were territorial and aggressive. They attacked anything that invaded their space. They didn't just stand and watch. Her door chimed. Diana opened it to find a security officer in the hallway. Diana Reeves, you're required to surrender your hunting equipment tonight instead of waiting the full week. New council order. They took everything. Her rifle, her tracking gear, her emergency beacon, even her field knife, which had been her grandfather's. The officer checked each item off a list with mechanical efficiency. When they left, Diana's apartment felt even emptier. She returned to the window. The ridge spines were gone, melted back into the forest like they had never been there. But on her window ledge, impossibly, was a single scale. Dark gray, the size of her palm, still warm. Ridge spine armor didn't just fall off. They shed scales only when marking territory or communicating with their own kind. Diana picked it up, feeling the rough texture against her fingers. In the distance, something called out. A low sound that vibrated through the walls, through the ground, through her bones. An answer. Maybe. Or a beginning. The waste district smelled like everything the colony wanted to forget. Diana carried her single bag down the narrow street between prefab shelters, each one identical to the next. Gray walls, small windows, doors that had been opened and closed too many times. You're the new one. An old woman sat on a bench outside one of the units. She had white hair pulled back in a tight braid and eyes that seemed to see too much. Diana, right? The failed hunter everyone's talking about. That's me. Diana stopped. Her assigned unit was 3 doors down, but something about the woman made her pause. I'm brute. The woman gestured to her legs, or where her legs should have been. Her pants were pinned up just below the knees. Lost them 40 years ago on a hunt. Took me a week to crawl back to the colony. By the time they found me, infection had set in. She smiled without humor. Hunting culture doesn't leave room for cripples. So here I am. Diana set down her bag. I'm sorry. Don't be. I made peace with it. Ruth tilted her head. Your supervisor told me about you. Said you failed because you couldn't kill a mother with cubs. Word travels fast. In the waste district, gossip is our main entertainment. Ruth pulled out a small device. This is your work assignment tablet. You'll be on exterior collection duty. That means going outside the perimeter to gather recyclable materials that the automated systems miss. Outside the perimeter, Diana's pulse quickened. Alone, usually with one other person, but we're short-staffed. You have hunting training, so you're qualified for solo runs. Ruth's expression softened slightly. I know it's not what you wanted, but it's honest work. And out there, nobody cares about your failures. The first week was brutal. Diana woke before dawn, suited up in the basic protective gear they provided, and walked out through the service gate into the purple forests. Her job was simple. Find anything useful that the colony had discarded or lost, tag it, and load it onto the collection drone that followed her. The work was lonely. The forests were beautiful in a way she had never appreciated during hunts. She had always been too focused on tracking, on killing, on proving herself. Now she noticed the way light filtered through the canopy. The patterns of smaller creatures moving through the undergrowth. The calls that echoed between the trees, complex and rhythmic, that on her 5th day, Diana found the snare traps. Someone had set them illegally, far from the colony's designated hunting zones. The traps were cruel devices, tightening when triggered, cutting deeper the more their victims struggled. The young ridge spine was caught in 3 of them. The creature was maybe 2 years old, barely half the size of the adults Diana had seen from her window. The snares had cut through its armored hide in several places. Blood pooled beneath it, dark purple against the forest floored. It should have been dead already. Instead, it watched Diana approach with eyes that held too much awareness. Diana knew the protocol. Tag the location, report it, move on. Let the hunting teams deal with it. The creature was dangerous, even wounded. Getting close was suicide. She knelt beside it anyway. The ridge spine's breathing was labored, each exhale a wheeze. Up close, Diana could see the intelligence in its eyes. Fear, yes. Pain, absolutely. But also something like resignation. I'm going to help you, Diana said quietly. The creature couldn't understand her words, but maybe her tone would matter. I need you to stay still. She pulled out her utility knife, the only blade they had allowed her to keep for war purposes. The snares were made of synthetic wire, designed to hold creatures far larger than this. Diana worked on the first one, talking the entire time. You're young. Probably got separated from your family. The wire was slick with blood. These traps are illegal. Whoever set them doesn't care about hunting laws. The ridge spine made a low sound, almost like a question. Diana paused, meeting its eyes. I'm not going to hurt you. I promise. The first snare came free. The creature shuddered, but didn't move. Diana worked faster on the second one, her fingers cramping from the effort. The wire had cut deep here, nearly to bone. This is going to hurt when it releases. The blood flow will come back. Diana positioned herself to avoid the creature's natural defensive strikes. Try not to kill me, okay? The second snare popped open. The ridge spine's whole body convulsed. Diana jumped back, but the creature didn't attack. It lay there, trembling, as blood flow returned to the damaged areas. The third snare was the worst. It had wrapped around the creature's front leg and chest, creating a tourniquet effect. Diana had to use both hands and all her strength to work the release mechanism. When it finally opened, the ridge spine let out a sound that made Diana's chest hurt. Not a roar, a cry of pain so raw and vulnerable that she felt tears on her own cheeks. She pulled emergency medical supplies from her pack. Basic wound sealant, antiseptic, and synthetic bandages designed for equipment repair. Not ideal for a living creature, but better than nothing. This might sting, Diana warned. She applied the antiseptic to the worst wounds. The ridge spine watched her work, its breathing gradually steadying. When Diana finished, the creature was still in bad shape, but no longer actively dying. She pulled out her water ration and poured it into a depression in a nearby rock. The ridge spine drank gratefully, its long tongue lapping up every drop. Diana sat back on her heels, suddenly exhausted. The sun had moved significantly. She had been here for over 2 hours. Her collection quota for the day was completely missed. I have to go, she told the ridge spine, but I'll come back tomorrow. I'll bring more water and check your wounds. The creature watched her stand. Its eyes followed her as she gathered her equipment and activated the collection drone. Diana walked several steps away, then looked back. The ridge spine was still watching. Something in its posture had changed. The fear was gone, replaced by something Diana couldn't name. She returned to the colony late, her uniform covered in purple blood. Ruth was waiting at the service gate. You're 3 hours overdue. Ruth's eyes went to the blood. What happened? Nothing. I got lost tracking a collection signal. Ruth stared at her for a long moment. Diana, compassion is illegal here. Whatever you did out there, don't make a habit. That night, Diana lay in her narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. She could still see the ridge spine's eyes, still hear its cry of pain, still feel the weight of its trust when it allowed her to touch it. Somewhere outside, something called in the darkness. A low, resonant sound that carried across the colony. Diana sat up, heart racing. Other sounds answered. Multiple creatures, their voices overlapping in a pattern that felt almost like language. The colony's alarm system activated briefly, then went silent. Diana went to her window. In the darkness beyond the perimeter, she saw movement. Shadows within shadows, too many to count. They weren't attacking. They were gathering. In the morning, Ruth found Diana early. Something happened last night. Creatures circled the waste district for hours. Didn't attack, didn't retreat. Just watched. Ruth's expression was troubled. The hunting district is calling it unprecedented behavior. They're sending scouts to investigate. Diana thought about the young ridge spine, wounded and alone. She thought about the scale that had appeared on her window ledge. She thought about choices and consequences. I need to go back out, Diana said. My collection route isn't finished. Ruth handed her the work tablet. Be careful. Whatever's happening, the creatures are changing their patterns. That makes them unpredictable. Diana took the tablet and headed for the service gate. She had a promise to keep. The young ridge spine was waiting for her. Diana found it in the same clearing where she had freed it from the snares, but it had moved itself to higher ground. Safer ground. The wounds looked better, though still severe. Diana approached slowly, carrying extra water and medical supplies she had bartered for with her meal rations. The creature's head lifted as she got closer, but it didn't flee. Hey there, Diana said softly. Let me check those wounds. She worked in silence, cleaning and rebandaging the worst injuries. The ridge spine remained still, occasionally making soft sounds that might have been contentment or pain. Diana chose to believe contentment. When she finished, she sat beside the creature and shared her lunch. Protein bars weren't exactly exciting, but the ridge spine seemed interested in the wrapper, sniffing it with obvious curiosity. I'm going to call you Ash, Diana decided, because of your gray coloring. That okay with you? Ash made a rumbling sound and rested its massive head near Diana's leg. Not quite touching, but close enough to share warmth. They sat together for nearly an hour, Diana occasionally talking about nothing important, Ash listening with what seemed like genuine interest at a sound in the forest made them both tense. Something was approaching, moving through the undergrowth with purpose. Diana's hand went to her utility knife. Useless against most predators, but better than nothing, that a pack runner emerged from the trees. Smaller than Ash, but faster, with 6 legs and a sleek build designed for pursuit. It was limping badly, favoring its rear right leg. Diana expected Ash to react defensively. Instead, the young ridge spine made a series of low calls. The pack runner hesitated, then approached cautiously. It stopped a few meters away and sat down, looking directly at Diana. Are you bringing me patience now? Diana asked Ash. The ridge spine rumbled again, sounding almost pleased. Diana spent the next hour examining the pack runner's leg. A clean break, probably from a fall. She used materials from her collection pack to create a splint, working carefully while the creature watched her with intelligent eyes. When she finished, the pack runner tested the splint, then made a chirping sound. It touched its nose to Diana's hand before disappearing back into the forest. This is getting complicated, Diana told Ash. Over the next week, more creatures appeared. A sky glider with a torn wing membrane. A burrow cat with infected wounds. 2 more pack runners, one old and arthritic, the other pregnant and malnourished. They came to the clearing where Ash waited, and Ash called for Diana. She treated them all. Used every bit of medical knowledge from her hunting training, every supply she could scavenge or trade for. Ruth noticed Diana's reduced food intake and started slipping her extra rations without comment. You're doing something out there, Ruth said one evening. Something the colony wouldn't approve of. Diana didn't deny it. They're intelligent, more than anyone realizes. They communicate, they remember, they feel pain. I know. Ruth's expression was sad. I try to tell people that 40 years ago, nobody wanted to hear it. Easier to kill something if you think it's just an animal. The scrap yards behind the waste district became Diana's unofficial hospital. Ash recovered enough to move around and started helping, using its bulk to create sheltered spaces for smaller creatures. The other animals seemed to understand that this was a safe zone. Diana documented everything in a personal journal, writing by flashlight after her shifts. Behavioral patterns, communication methods, evidence of emotional bonds between different species. Information that would revolutionize xenobiology if anyone cared to listen. Then the hunters came. Diana was treating the arthritic pack runner when she heard the commotion. Shouts from the colony proper, the sound of running feet, weapons charging. She stood and saw people scrambling away from the main street, that a crystal horn had somehow gotten into the colony. The massive creature was cornered against a residential building, its translucent horn glowing with bioluminescent distress. Crystal horns were normally peaceful herbivores, but when frightened they became incredibly dangerous. Three hunting teams surrounded it, weapons raised. Civilians were too close, trapped behind the creature. If the hunters fired, people would be caught in the crossfire. Diana ran. She pushed through the gathering crowd, ignoring the protests and warnings. Her work uniform identified her as Waste District, nobody important. The hunters didn't even notice her until she stepped between them and the crystal horn. "Move!" the team leader shouted. "That thing is about to charge." Diana raised her hands, not in surrender, but in a gesture she had learned from watching Ash. Palms forward, fingers spread, no weapons. "Don't shoot," she said. Then she turned her back on the hunters and faced the crystal horn. The creature was magnificent up close. 3 meters tall at the shoulder, its crystalline horn refracting light into rainbow patterns. Its eyes were wide with panic, breath coming in sharp bursts. Diana knelt. Slowly, deliberately, she lowered herself to the ground. Unarmed, vulnerable, trusting. The crowd went silent. Someone was probably recording this. Diana didn't care. She kept her breathing steady and her posture non-threatening. "It's okay," she said to the crystal horn. "Nobody's going to hurt you. I promise." The creature's breathing started to slow. Its horn stopped glowing quite so intensely. Diana stayed perfectly still, letting the crystal horn make the next move that took several minutes. The longest minutes of Diana's life. Then the creature took a step forward. Another. Its massive head lowered until Diana could feel its breath on her hair. She slowly raised one hand and touched the side of its face. The crystal horn's skin was warm and surprisingly soft. The creature made a sound like wind chimes, gentle and questioning. "The gate is that way," Diana said quietly, pointing toward the nearest exit. "Your herd is probably worried about you." The crystal horn lifted its head. Diana stood and walked beside it, one hand resting lightly on its shoulder. The crowd parted, people pressing against walls to let them pass. The hunters lowered their weapons, looking uncertain. Diana guided the creature through the colony streets toward the service gate. Workers there stared but opened the gate without argument. The crystal horn paused at the threshold, looking back at Diana. "Go on," she said. "You're free." It touched its horn to her shoulder, a gentle tap that felt like gratitude, then walked out into the forest. Diana watched until it disappeared into the trees. When she turned around, half the colony seemed to be watching. The hunters, the civilians, council members who had come to see what the commotion was about. In the back of the crowd, Diana spotted her father, his expression unreadable. The Krell observer, Vorin, pushed through the crowd. His scaled face was close to Diana's, studying her with intense focus. "Explain what you did," he demanded. "I communicated," Diana said simply. "Impossible. Beasts don't have language." Diana met his eyes. "Maybe you've been looking for the wrong kind of language." The crowd erupted in conversation. Council leader Raymond appeared, flanked by security officers. "Diana Reeves, you will come with us for questioning." Before Diana could respond, a sound rolled across the colony. Multiple creatures calling from the forest, their voices overlapping in patterns too complex to be random. Ash's voice was among them. Diana was certain. The calls continued for several minutes, then faded into silence. Everyone in the colony had heard them. Everyone had felt the weight of something changing. Ruth appeared at Diana's side, her wheelchair navigating through the crowd. "Let her be," Ruth said to Raymond. "She just saved civilian lives." "Or did you miss that part?" Raymond's jaw tightened. "This incident will be investigated. Everyone return to your duties." The crowd dispersed slowly, people whispering to each other. Diana started walking back to the waste district, her legs shaking with delayed adrenaline. Vorin followed her. "I need to understand what you are," the Krell said. Diana kept walking. "I'm just someone who listens." "No." Vorin's voice was troubled. "You're something we thought was extinct." something my people spent centuries hunting to extinction across multiple worlds. Diana stopped. What are you talking about? Beast speakers, beings who could unite animals against their predators. We destroyed them wherever we found them, convinced they were threats to the natural order. Voron's scales rippled with what might have been shame. But I've never heard of a human beast speaker. Your species is too new to the galaxy. Maybe, Diana said quietly. Evolution works faster than you think. That night, Diana returned to the scrapyards. Ash was there, along with a dozen other creatures she had treated. They surrounded her in a loose circle, not threatening, just present. Diana sat in the center of them all and finally let herself cry. From fear, from exhaustion, from the weight of being something she didn't understand. Ash moved closer and rested its head in her lap. The other creatures settled around them, creating a living barrier between Diana and the rest of the world. In the distance, the colony lights blazed. Tomorrow would bring questions, investigations, possibly exile. But tonight, Diana was exactly where she belonged. The investigation lasted 3 days. Diana sat through hours of questioning, explaining again and again what had happened with the crystal horn. The council wanted details. The hunters wanted to know her techniques. The scientists wanted blood samples. She refused the scientists. The rest she answered honestly. Yes, she had been treating injured creatures outside the colony. Yes, she believed they were more intelligent than previously thought. No, she couldn't explain exactly how the communication worked. Voron attended every session, watching with his unsettling intensity. He didn't speak much, but Diana felt his presence like a weight. On the 4th day, the corporate ship arrived. Diana was in the scrap yards with Ash when Ruth came rolling up in her wheelchair, moving faster than Diana had ever seen. We have a problem, Ruth said. A big one. The ship was sleek and expensive, bearing the logo of Frontier Genetics Corporation. Diana watched it land from the waste district, her stomach sinking. She knew what corporations wanted. Resources to exploit. Profits to extract. The woman who emerged was dressed in clothes that cost more than Diana's entire year's salary. Tall, confident, with dark hair pulled back in a severe style. She swept through the colony like she owned it, flanked by security personnel and scientists in clean white coats. Council leader Raymond greeted her personally. Diana couldn't hear the conversation from this distance, but she saw Raymond gesture toward the waste district. Toward her. Her name is Catherine Price, Ruth said quietly. She runs FGC's Xenobiology division. If she's here, it's because she heard about you. Within an hour, Diana was summoned. Not to the council chambers this time, but to a private meeting room the corporation had rented in the colony's nicest hotel. Catherine Price sat behind a temporary desk like it was a throne. Her smile was sharp and professional. Diana Reeves, the girl who talks to animals. Price gestured to a chair. Please sit. We have much to discuss. Diana remained standing. I'm not interested in whatever you're selling. I'm not selling anything. I'm offering. Price pulled up a holographic display. Your ability is remarkable. Unprecedented. With proper training and resources, you could revolutionize how humanity interacts with alien ecosystems. You mean how corporations exploit them? Price's smile didn't falter. Such cynicism. I'm offering you a chance to make a real difference. Proper facilities, unlimited resources, a team of experts to study your gift. You could help creatures across dozens of worlds. By turning them into products. By understanding them. Price leaned forward. Right now, you're one person with a handful of injured animals in a scrapyard. Imagine what you could do with real support. Genetic analysis, communication matrices, behavioral prediction models. We could create protocols that benefit both humans and native species. Diana thought about the creatures waiting for her in the scrapyards. Ash, recovering from wounds inflicted by illegal traps. The pack runners learning to trust again after years of being hunted. The sky glider whose wing she had carefully splinted. What would you want in return? Cooperation, access to your methods, your observations, your unique perspective. Price's eyes gleamed, and occasionally we would need specimens for study. No, I'm offering you wealth, status, the chance to restore your family's honor. Your father could hold his head high again. My answer is still no. Price's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. We came here to do this the easy way, the beneficial way. But make no mistake, we will study this phenomenon, with or without you. That night, Price's team set up their equipment on the colony's outskirts. Massive scanning devices, capture drones, genetic sampling stations. They worked efficiently, like they had done this 100 times before. Diana watched from the waste district, feeling helpless. Ruth appeared beside her. They'll go after the creatures tomorrow, Ruth said. The ones you've been helping. They're the easiest targets. Diana's hands clenched into fists. I won't let them. How exactly do you plan to stop them? They have legal permits, corporate backing, and enough firepower to handle anything this planet can throw at them. Diana didn't have an answer. She returned to the scrap yards and found Ash waiting. The ridge spine had sensed her distress somehow. It pressed close to her, offering silent comfort. They're coming for you, Diana whispered. For all of you. I don't know how to protect you. Ash made a low sound, almost questioning. Diana felt something shift in her mind, like a door opening. Not words exactly, but impressions, feelings, images of the forest, of creatures gathering, of something that felt like unity. I don't understand, Diana said. The feeling intensified. Diana closed her eyes and stopped fighting it. The connection rushed through her like electricity, and suddenly she could sense them. Every creature she had helped scattered across the forest. She knew their locations, their emotions, their readiness. They were waiting for her call. They had always been waiting. To Diana's eyes snapped open. Oh, the next morning, Price's team moved into the forest with military precision. They had tracked the creatures Diana had treated, using colony surveillance data and thermal imaging. Their target was Ash's clearing first, then they would expand from there. Diana stood at the edge of the perimeter and sent out her call. Not with her voice, but with that strange sense that connected her to the creatures. A feeling of urgency, of danger, of the need to hide. The response was immediate. Across the forest, creatures moved, not fleeing in panic, but relocating with purpose. By the time Price's team reached Ash's clearing, it was empty. They tried the next location. Empty. The next. Also empty. Price's frustration was evident even from a distance. She ordered wider sweeps, more aggressive tactics. Her team set up stunning nets and tranquilizer fields. That evening, they succeeded. 3 pack runners, including the pregnant female Diana had been monitoring, were caught in the nets. The team also captured 2 burrow cats and, worst of all, Ash. Diana felt their capture like physical pain. She doubled over outside her shelter, gasping for breath. Ruth was there instantly. What's wrong? They got them. They're hurt. Scared. Diana struggled to stand. I have to get them out. That's suicide. Price's armed guards. You'll be arrested or killed. Diana looked at Ruth with eyes that reflected something wild. I won't be alone. She walked into the forest, following the connection that pulsed in her mind like a heartbeat. The creatures came to her. Every animal she had helped, and more beyond that. Ridge spines, crystal horns, pack runners, sky gliders. Species that normally avoided each other gathered in response to her silent call. Diana stood in the center of them all and felt the weight of their trust. They had chosen this. Chosen her. Not because she dominated them or controlled them, but because she had shown them something they understood. Compassion. Protection. Choice. They took our family, Diana said to the assembled creatures. I need help getting them back. The forest erupted with calls of agreement. Hundreds of voices, different species, united in purpose. The sound carried all the way to the colony, where people stopped what they were doing and listened in amazement. In the corporate camp, Price heard it too. She looked toward the forest and saw the glowing eyes reflecting her floodlights. Too many to count. Too many to fight. Secure the perimeter, she ordered. They're just animals. They won't attack organized resistance. She was wrong. Diana walked toward the camp with an army at her back. Not charging, not violent, but absolutely unstoppable. A living tide of New Tertius's wildlife moving with single purpose. The guards raised their weapons. Diana raised her hand, and the creatures stopped. A standoff, tense and electric. Vorin appeared from the darkness, his Krell unit behind him. He positioned himself between Diana and Price's guards, facing the corporation's forces. "Stand down," he said to Price's team. "You have no authority here," Price snapped. "I have the authority of the Warrior Code. She is not attacked. She has broken no law. You, however, have captured intelligent beings without proper classification protocols." Vorin's voice was hard. "The Krell Empire has treaties regarding such actions." Price's face went red. "Those are animals, not people." "Are they?" Vorin gestured to the creatures behind Diana. "They demonstrate organization, communication, and purposeful cooperation. That meets 3 of the 5 criteria for intelligence classification under Krell law." Diana stepped forward. "Let them go, all of them, and leave this world. You can't make demands. You're a failed hunter from the Waste District." "No," Diana's voice carried across the camp. "I'm the person this world chose to speak for it, and I'm telling you to leave." One of Price's guards moved to grab Diana. Ash's roar split the night, so loud and so close that the guards stumbled backward. The ridge spine had been right behind Diana, camouflaged by shadows. Price looked at the assembled creatures, at Diana standing fearless before her, at Vorin and his Krell warriors blocking her security team. She was a smart businesswoman. She knew when she had lost. "Release the specimens," she said coldly. "We're leaving." The cages opened. Ash limped out first, moving straight to Diana. The pack runners followed, including the pregnant female. The burrow cats scattered into the forest. Price's team packed their equipment with angry efficiency. Within 2 hours, their ship lifted off, leaving scorch marks on the landing pad. Diana stood in the clearing, surrounded by creatures, and finally let herself breathe. The colony didn't sleep that night. Diana sat in the scrap yards with Ash's head in her lap, watching the lights of the settlement flicker with activity. Somewhere, people were arguing about her, deciding her fate, planning their next move. Ruth wheeled up at dawn with protein bars and water. "The council wants to meet with you. Officially this time." Diana fed half her protein bar to Ash, who accepted it with surprising delicacy. "They going to arrest me?" "Unclear. Vorin's presence has complicated things. Apparently, his report to the Krell Empire about a potential B speaker has caused significant interest." Ruth smiled grimly. "The council can't just disappear you when alien governments are watching." The meeting was held in the main council chamber, but this time Diana wasn't alone. Vorin stood beside her, his scaled form imposing in the formal setting. Ruth had insisted on attending as a witness, and to Diana's shock, her father sat in the observation section, actually present instead of hiding. Council leader Raymond looked tired. "This situation has become untenable. We have a citizen who can apparently communicate with wildlife, corporate interests circling like scavengers, and the Krell Empire requesting formal documentation of your abilities. I just want to be left alone," Diana said. "Me and the creatures. That's no longer possible. What happened yesterday was witnessed by the entire colony. Your actions have implications beyond personal preference." Vorin stepped forward. "The Krell Empire proposes a formal study. Diana would be recognized as a person of interest, granted protections and resources. In exchange, she would help develop new protocols for human-Krell interaction with native species." "Absolutely not." The voice came from the observation section. Diana's father stood, and every head turned. "My daughter is not going to be some experiment." Diana stared at him. He hadn't spoken to her in weeks. Now he was defending her. "Mr. Reeves, this is not your decision," Raymond said. "It's not yours either." Diana's father moved to the main floor, his weathered face set with determination. "I was wrong about my daughter. I taught her that strength meant killing, that compassion was weakness. I watched her fail 3 hunts because she couldn't be cruel, and I thought she was broken." He looked at Diana. "But she's not broken. She's evolved, and you're all too blind to see it." Raymond's expression hardened. "This is not about family drama. This is about colony security." "Then let's talk about security." A new voice entered the conversation. The head of colony security, a woman named Patricia Odoms, stepped forward. "In the past week, Wildlife incidents have decreased by 60%. The creatures aren't avoiding us because we're hunting them better. They're avoiding us because she asked them to. Diana blinked. What? We've been monitoring animal movement patterns. Since you started your work in the scrap yards, attacks on the perimeter have dropped significantly. Creatures still come close, but they don't try to breach the walls. It's like they know where the boundaries are now. Voren made a sound of interest. Territorial nawutiation. She's established protocols without anyone realizing it. The council members exchanged glances. Raymond leaned back in his chair, thinking. What exactly do you propose? He asked Diana. A sanctuary zone. Outside the colony perimeter, but within our territorial claim. A place where injured or sick creatures can come without fear of being hunted. In exchange, I'll work with the security team to maintain peaceful boundaries. You want us to dedicate land to protecting wildlife. One council member laughed. That's insane. Is it? Patricia pulled up a holographic display showing colony resource data. We spend enormous amounts on perimeter defense. Weapons, ammunition, medical care for injured hunters. What if we didn't have to fight them at all? The Krell would see it as weakness, another council member argued. The Krell are re-evaluating their entire approach to wildlife interaction, Voren said. Our empire spans hundreds of worlds. We've depleted ecosystems on most of them because we only know how to hunt, never to coexist. If Diana's methods work here, they could be adapted elsewhere. The debate continued for hours. Diana sat through all, feeling detached from the proceedings. These people were talking about her life, her work, her connection to the creatures, like it was all just data to be analyzed. Finally, Raymond called for a vote. The sanctuary zone proposal passed by a narrow margin. Diana would be reassigned from waste collection to ecological management. She would work with both human security and Krell observers to develop new protocols. One condition, Raymond added. You train others. This can't depend entirely on you. Diana thought about Owen, her former partner who had abandoned her, about the young hunters who mocked her compassion. I'll try, but this isn't something you can force. People have to be willing to listen. Then make them willing. Raymond dismissed the council. You have 2 weeks to show results. The next days were chaos. Engineers surveyed potential sanctuary locations. Patricia assigned Diana a security liaison, a young officer named David who seemed genuinely interested in her methods. Voren followed her everywhere, documenting every interaction with the creatures. The hardest part was the people. Word spread that Diana was offering to teach her techniques. Some came out of genuine curiosity. Others came to mock. A few came because the council ordered them to. Owen showed up on the 3rd day. He stood at the edge of the scrap yards, looking uncomfortable. Can I talk to you? He asked. Diana was treating a sky glider with a fungal infection. She didn't look up. You made it clear we have nothing to say to each other. I was wrong. Owen stepped closer. I watched what happened with the corporate ship. I saw you walk into a standoff with nothing but trust and conviction. You didn't dominate those creatures. You didn't control them. They chose to follow you. So teach me how you do it. Diana finally looked at him. Owen's expression was sincere, stripped of the arrogance she remembered from their hunting days. It's not about doing anything, Diana said. It's about not doing, not assuming you're superior, not treating them like targets or resources, just seeing them as what they are, which is alive, aware, worthy of respect. Diana gestured to the sky glider. This one has a name, at least I think it does. A series of calls it makes that others respond to. It has preferences, fears, hopes maybe. I don't control any of that. I just acknowledge it exists. Owen knelt beside her, watching the sky glider. The creature eyed him warily, but didn't flee. Start slow, Diana instructed. No sudden movements. Let it come to you if it wants to. Respect means giving them choice. They worked together in silence. The sky glider eventually allowed Owen to touch its injured wing, though it kept a watchful eye on him the entire time. This is going to take practice, Owen said. Everything worth doing does. More people came. Some learned quickly. Others struggled with the fundamental mindset shift required. Diana found herself most successful with the colony's children, who hadn't yet been fully indoctrinated into hunting culture. They approached the creatures with natural wonder instead of learned prejudice. The sanctuary zone took shape. A 5 square kilometer area marked with boundary beacons that the creatures somehow understood. Diana walked the perimeter with Ash, establishing the borders through that strange connection she still didn't fully understand. Injured creatures began appearing at the sanctuary entrance. At first, just ones Diana had treated before. Then new animals guided by others. A whole ecosystem network passing along information through methods human science couldn't yet measure. Vorin documented everything. This is extraordinary. Do you realize what you've created? A safe place. That's all. No. You've created dialogue where there was only violence. You've proven that intelligence exists in forms we never bothered to recognize. Vorin's scales rippled with emotion. Diana was learning to read. My people will have to rewrite centuries of cultural doctrine because of you. 2 weeks passed quickly. The council reconvened to assess Diana's progress. Patricia presented security data showing continued reduction in hostile encounters. David demonstrated new perimeter protocols based on Diana's methods. Even some of the hunters admitted that having a sanctuary zone made their actual hunt safer, since aggressive creatures could be redirected rather than fought. Raymond studied the reports, then looked at Diana. This is working. I don't understand it, but it's working. Does that mean I can keep going? It means you're officially the colony's first ecological guardian. You'll have a budget, a team, and the authority to expand your work. Raymond almost smiled. It also means you're no longer a failed hunter. That designation is removed from your record. Diana should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt tired. I was never a failed hunter. I was just a successful something else. That night, she sat in the sanctuary with Ash and 24 other creatures. The pregnant packrunner had given birth to 4 healthy pups. The arthritic packrunner was moving better on supplements Diana had formulated. The sky glider's wing had healed enough for short flights. Ruth found her there, having navigated her wheelchair across the rough terrain with stubborn determination. Your father wants to see you, Ruth said. He's waiting outside the sanctuary. Diana's chest tightened. I don't know what to say to him. Then listen. That's what you do best anyway. Diana found her father standing near the boundary beacon. He looked older than she remembered, worn down by something heavier than just age. I owe you an apology, he said. More than one. I treated you like you were defective when you were actually ahead of your time. You taught me to hunt, Diana replied. That skill is still part of what I do. I just use it differently. I taught you to kill. You taught yourself to heal. Her father's voice cracked. I'm proud of you. I should have said that weeks ago. They stood in awkward silence, years of misunderstanding between them. Finally, Diana stepped forward and hugged him. He held her tight, and she felt his tears on her shoulder. Will you teach me? He asked. I'm old, probably too set in my ways, but I want to try. Diana pulled back and smiled. Everyone's teachable if they're willing to listen. Come on, there's someone I want you to meet. She led him into the sanctuary, where Ash waited. Her father's eyes widened at the size of the ridge spine, but Diana felt his determination underneath the fear. This is Ash, Diana said. Ash, this is my father. He wants to learn. The ridge spine regarded the older man with intelligent eyes. After a long moment, Ash lowered its head in a gesture Diana had learned meant acceptance. Her father reached out with shaking hands and touched Ash's scarred armor. Wonder transformed his weathered face. They're beautiful, he whispered. Diana felt the connection pulse through the sanctuary, linking her to Ash, to the gathered creatures, to her father's trembling amazement. This was what she had been trying to explain. Not control, not domination. Connection, understanding. The radical act of seeing another being as equal. Yes, Diana agreed. They are. 6 months changed everything. The sanctuary zone expanded twice to accommodate the growing number of creatures who sought refuge there. Diana's team grew to 12 people, including Owen, her father, and 3 former hunters who had completely abandoned their old profession. The colony itself transformed. Perimeter conflicts dropped to almost zero. Trade routes through previously dangerous territories opened up because the local wildlife had learned humans could be negotiated with rather than fought. Children grew up visiting the sanctuary as part of their education, learning respect before they learned fear. Not everyone was happy. Some hunters resented the cultural shift. They formed a vocal minority that demanded return to traditional values. But their arguments lost strength every time security data showed another month of reduced casualties and increased efficiency. Vorin became a permanent resident, working alongside Diana to document everything. His reports to the Krell Empire sparked debate across dozens of worlds. Some Krell called for embracing the new methods. Others saw it as weakness incompatible with warrior culture. Then the Krell High Commander arrived for an official inspection. Diana stood at the landing pad with Vorin and colony leadership, watching the massive Krell warship descend. It was 3 times larger than any vessel that had visited New Tertius before, bristling with weapons that could level the entire colony in minutes. Commander Throck is traditional, Vorin warned quietly. He built his reputation on conquest and successful hunts across hostile worlds. He views your methods with suspicion. He can view them however he wants. I'm not changing what I do. The commander emerged from the ship like a force of nature. Nearly 3 meters tall, covered in battle scars, his scales darker than Vorin's and patterned with rank insignia. Behind him came an honor guard of elite Krell warriors. Throck surveyed the colony with sharp eyes. So this is the world where humans claim to speak with beasts. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Show me. They led him to the sanctuary. Diana walked ahead, aware that every step was being evaluated, judged, measured against centuries of Krell military doctrine. The sanctuary had never looked more alive. Creatures moved through the established zones, interacting with human caretakers. A group of children sat in a circle, learning to identify different species calls. Owen worked with a crystal horn, treating a minor injury while the massive creature stood perfectly calm. Throck stopped at the boundary. They don't flee. Why would they? Diana asked. This is their home. We're the guests here. Beasts don't have homes. They have territories they defend through violence. Diana gestured to where Ash rested with 3 younger ridgespines. Ash has never been violent toward any human in this sanctuary. But if you threaten the young one she's teaching, you would see exactly how fierce she can be. That's not mindless aggression. That's protective instinct. The same thing parents of any species feel. Throck's scales rippled. You assign them emotions they don't possess. I observe emotions they clearly demonstrate. Diana approached Ash, who lifted her head in greeting. Watch. She sat beside the ridge spine and placed her hand on Ash's armored side. The connection flowed between them, that strange awareness that had become natural over months of practice. Diana focused on the feeling of contentment, safety, trust. Ash rumbled and rolled slightly, exposing her softer underbelly in a gesture of complete vulnerability. The younger ridgespines mimicked the behavior, learning from their elder. That is submission, Throck said. You have dominated them. No, that is trust. They choose to be vulnerable because they know I won't exploit it. Diana stood. Commander, would you like to try? Throck's warrior escort tensed. Vorin looked alarmed. The commander himself seemed caught between curiosity and offense. I am Krell. We do not seek permission from prey animals. Then you'll never understand what I do. Diana's voice was calm but firm. Because the first step is acknowledging that control and connection are not the same thing. For a long moment, Throck stared at her. Then, to everyone's shock, he approached Ash. The ridgespine watched him but didn't move. What do I do? Throck asked, voice carefully neutral. Kneel. Show her you're not a threat. Let her make the choice to trust you. The Krell High Commander knelt. It took visible effort for him to assume such a vulnerable position. Ash studied him with intelligent eyes, then slowly, deliberately, reached out and touched her nose to his armored shoulder. Throck remained perfectly still. Diana could see the tension in his posture, the lifetime of predatory instincts warring with this new experience. Then something in him relaxed. His hand came up slowly and touched Ash's scarred armor. She's been injured, Throck observed. Illegal traps. That's how I first met her. She was dying, and she let me help because she understood I wasn't there to hurt her. Throck stayed kneeling for several more moments. When he finally stood, his expression was thoughtful rather than certain. "You have created something unusual here," he admitted. "But I need to see more before I can recommend empire-wide adoption." Over the next 3 days, Diana showed him everything. The communication methods she had documented, the reduced conflict zones, the economic benefits of cooperation over constant warfare. The children who grew up learning both strength and compassion. On the final day, Throck requested a private meeting with Diana and Vorin at the sanctuary. "I have fought on 40 worlds," Throck said. "I have led warriors into battles that seemed impossible. I have built my reputation on strength and victory." He paused, looking out over the sanctuary where dozens of species coexisted peacefully. "But I never questioned whether strength had to mean violence." "It doesn't," Diana said. "The strongest thing I've ever done was kneel before a wounded creature and trust it not to kill me. My people have depleted 17 worlds through aggressive hunting. We moved on each time, finding new territories to conquer. But there are no infinite frontiers." Throck's scales shifted through colors Diana was learning to recognize as deep emotion. "We have created wastelands and called it glory." Vorin spoke carefully. "Commander, are you suggesting a change in policy?" "I'm suggesting we were wrong. For centuries, we were wrong." Throck turned to Diana. "Your methods will face resistance. Many Krell will see them as weakness, but I will support their implementation, starting with our most damaged ecosystems." "I can't do this alone," Diana said. "It took me months to establish connections here. You're talking about entire planets. You won't be alone. Vorin will lead the training program. We will identify Krell who show aptitude for your methods, and we will find humans and other species who share your ability." Throck's expression hardened with resolve. "This will take generations to fully implement, but it starts now." News of Throck's decision spread rapidly. Within weeks, New Tertius became a training center. People came from other human colonies, some Krell warriors willing to learn new ways, even a few members of other alien species curious about the methods. Diana found herself teaching constantly. Some students grasped the concepts quickly. Others struggled against ingrained assumptions about dominance and control. The most successful were often those who, like Diana, had been labeled as failures in their original cultures. Ruth became the program's administrator, managing the logistics with fierce efficiency. Patricia expanded security protocols based on Diana's methods to protect both students and wildlife. Owen developed a curriculum that combined traditional hunting knowledge with ecological awareness. Diana's father became one of the program's best instructors. His journey from rigid hunter to compassionate guardian resonated with older students who faced similar transformations. He taught with the passion of someone who had lost years to wrong thinking and desperately wanted others to avoid his mistakes. The sanctuary expanded until it covered nearly a quarter of the colony's territorial claim. Creatures came from across New Tertius, some injured, some sick, some simply seeking the safe zone they had learned existed. Diana walked through it each evening, checking on residents both human and animal, feeling the web of connections that now spanned the entire region. One evening, she found a creature she had never seen before. Small, barely the size of her hand, with iridescent feathers and 6 delicate legs. It sat at the sanctuary entrance, looking lost. Diana knelt, extending her hand slowly. The creature regarded her with bright, intelligent eyes. After a moment's hesitation, it hopped onto her palm. "You're new here," Diana said softly. "Welcome." The creature made a sound like tiny bells. Diana felt the now familiar sensation of connection, tentative and cautious. This little being had traveled far, seeking something it had heard about through whatever communication network the creatures used. It had heard about the human who listened, who protected, who saw them as more than targets or obstacles. Diana cupped the creature carefully and carried it deeper in the sanctuary. Ash raised her head as Diana approached, the ridged spine somehow understanding that another refugee had arrived. "We're getting quite the collection," Diana told Ash. Creatures from all over the planet, and now maybe from other worlds too. All because we dared to try something different. Ash rumbled contentedly. The small creature settled into Diana's hands, already relaxing in the safety of the sanctuary. Ruth found Diana there an hour later, still holding the tiny creature while it slept. The Colony Council wants to establish a formal academy, Ruth said. Dedicated training facility, permanent staff, research division. They're calling it the Guardian Institute. That's ambitious. It's necessary. We have a waiting list of 200 applicants for the next training session. Thrak has authorized construction of similar facilities on 3 Krell worlds. The humans aren't the only ones evolving their approach. Diana looked out over the sanctuary at the impossible thing she had helped create. 6 months ago, she had been labeled a failure, exiled to the Waste District, deemed unfit for the only life she had known. Now she was teaching entire civilizations a new way forward. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had taken that shot? Ruth asked. If you had killed the Razor Tusk and her cubs. All the time, Diana stroked the sleeping creature in her hands. I'd probably be a successful hunter right now. Respected, valued, completely unaware that there was another way. No regrets. Diana thought about Ash, about the hundreds of creatures who now lived safely in the sanctuary, about the students who were learning to see intelligence in forms they'd been taught to destroy. She thought about her father's transformation, Owen's dedication, the Krell warriors who were questioning centuries of tradition. She thought about the tiny creature in her hands, who had traveled so far seeking the safety she had promised. None, Diana said. Not a single one. The stars came out over New Tertius, the same stars that looked down on dozens of worlds where change was beginning to take root, where people were starting to ask questions about strength and weakness, about control and connection, about what it meant to be truly powerful. And in a sanctuary on a frontier world, a woman once labeled as failed sat surrounded by creatures who had chosen to trust her. They rested together in the darkness, predator and prey, species unified by something stronger than instinct or tradition. Understanding. Respect. The radical transformation that happened when someone dared to listen instead of fight. Diana looked up at those stars and smiled. This was only the beginning.